What the Bad Law Project sees is a growing tendency in this country for people in public office to appear, now I'm not saying they are bought, but to appear as if they have been bought. That is to say, they must take certain positions and they can't take others. And that has a corrosive effect on our society, because we all know, everyone knows, that it's happening. Everyone knows that there are certain things you say in whispered tones, there's certain things you roll your eyes at and hope you don't get caught doing so, there's certain things you can say over the dinner table, although in Scotland they're trying to criminalise dinner table chat as well. There are certain things that we all know we should just shut up about.
For the wrong to rule, the good must just stand idly by.
Hello, this week we are launching the Bad Law Project. What is the Bad Law Project, I hear you ask? And because I'm not a lawyer, I'm not going to answer that question. I've surrounded myself with much smarter people than I. But essentially, it was inspired by a very brave man who took on the entire system, having been investigated for a so-called non-crime by the police back in 2019. He took on the system and he won. And it inspired us all to say, when one person stands up against the system, they can achieve almost anything. So welcome to day one of the Bad Law Project. We're going to discuss about what it is, and we hope that you enjoy the discussion. So first of all, I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves. Chairman Howe?
My name is Harry Miller. I founded Fair Cop back in 2019 when the police visited me for tweeting a limerick.
I'm Sarah Phillimore. I joined Fair Cop in June of 2019. I'm a family law barrister, so I've got an interest in human rights and state coercion.
I'm Anna Loutfi. I'm a free speech barrister, self-styled. I practice human rights law, and I retrained as a barrister midlife after spending many years in Eastern Europe as an academic. So free speech is of a special interest to me.
Lovely. So let's kick off with Chairman Howe. What is the Bad Law Project, Chairman Howe?
We conceived of the idea of the Bad Law Project because we see that there are some very good laws in Britain. We're very lucky to have good law. It's so good, in fact, that nations across the world try and mimic us and follow us. And we've noticed that this good law has been corrupted by some very poor guidance and some very poor practice. There was no suggestion, for instance, in my case, that I'd broken the law by retweeting a feminist limerick. But I had transgressed College of Policing guidance. And unfortunately, the College of Policing guidance corrupted the law, hence we call that bad law. And we discovered that by going through the court system, by going to the High Court and then to the Court of Appeal, we were able to gain clarity on what the law actually said and drive out the bad guidance and leave us with good law. And that's what I'm hoping that this project does.
And why the Bad Law Project? Why does it need to exist, Sarah?
Because we've got complacent. It is a source of great sadness and surprise to me that the European Convention on Human Rights, which was largely drafted by British lawyers, was a response to the horrors of the Second World War. It was meant to be a fortress for human rights, so that could never happen again. Because freedom to speak is the right upon which all others depend. If you cannot speak about something, that hampers your ability to think about it, and it also destroys your ability to campaign for it and to protect it. So the laws in our country were excellent, but as Harry says, I think a mixture of complacency and deliberate willful attempts to go round the law to promote an ideology which has no moral or legal legitimacy has led to a really worrying attack on the laws which are fundamental to any society worth living in. Because I was a bit, naive about all of this, and I saw what was happening to Harry, and I realised this actually has consequences, implications for our democracy, the rule of law, for everything that underpins a society worth living in. So hopefully the Bad Law Project can be part of restoring that balance, because the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. But I only understood that relatively recently.
And what are we aiming to achieve? Anna?
Well, I'm glad that Sarah mentioned the foundational aspect of freedom of expression, because, you know, Strasbourg jurisprudence, by which I mean the case law coming out of the European Court of Human Rights, makes it quite clear that without freedom of expression, particularly political freedom of expression, there is no democracy. Britain prides itself on being a democracy that is a world leader. We export our legal institutions, but also our democratic principles all over the world. It continues to be a source of soft power to this country and a source of pride. And the Bad Law Project... Pride?
Okay,
pride in law, pride in the rule of law, pride in...
My heart just went for a minute there.
Our judges are sought world over in arbitration, international arbitration, in all sorts of legal advisory boards and tribunals, because it is generally understood that of all the countries in the world, the judiciary in this country is less likely to be purchasable, corrupt. What the Bad Law Project sees is a growing tendency in this country for people in public office to appear, now I'm not saying they are bought, but to appear as if they have been bought. That is to say, they must take certain positions and they can't take others. And that has a corrosive effect on our society, because we all know, everyone knows, that it's happening. Everyone knows that there are certain things you say in whispered tones. There's certain things you roll your eyes at and hope you don't get caught doing so. There's certain things you can say over the dinner table, although in Scotland they're trying to criminalise dinner table chat as well. There are certain things that we all know we should just shut up about. Now, of course, if I think someone looks ugly in that new birthday frock that they bought for themselves, I'll probably keep it to myself. I am used to self-censorship, and I think self-censorship is normal and healthy up to a point. But when we're self-censoring about really important issues, current affairs, about our political role on the world stage, about which side we should be taking in a war, about where our taxes go, about the types of technology that govern our life. If we can't say, for example, what a woman is, well, it's corrosive, and you're going to see an increasingly demoralised population that is cowed and broken. And bad law seeks to give people the confidence to say, actually, my institutions protect me. You might look down on me, you might find me vulgar, you might find me from the wrong background, you might dismiss me as whatever hyperbole you're going to throw at me, my racism, my supremacist views, about which you know nothing. But you will not silence me, because I have the right to participate in public life. I pay my taxes, I vote, and this is what democracy is about. And that's why I say Strasbourg is completely correct. Freedom of expression, without it, no democracy. You want to live in a totalitarian society? Knock yourself out.
Well, she's, tell us what you really think. So why, Harry or Sarah, why are politicians, it seems to me that politics is broken. It's completely broken. As you said, you can't define what a woman is. Keir Starmer, the leader of the main opposition party, says that some women have penises. Why are politicians not doing this, and why do we not trust them to deal with this, and why are we using the law instead?
I think because politicians, by and large, are windsocks. They lick their finger, stick it up, and see which way they think the public wind is blowing, and try to align their views with the public. Now, law is entirely different from that. It doesn't need re-electing every 4 to 5 years. It doesn't have to have mass popular appeal. It's dry. It's stable. It's fairly stale in many respects. And that's why I think law is so important, and politicians are increasingly irrelevant. And what's sad about my case, for instance, is that, as Anna says, everybody knew that non-crime hate incidents were wrong. The government knew that they were wrong. Priti Patel knew that they were wrong, but they didn't have the balls, the will.
Careful.
To do anything about it. And what we have now is a situation where government, knowing what to do, subcontracts out the risk to private individuals like me to put our foundational institutions right for them. When we win, they then jump on the bandwagon and go, it was us what told you so, we said this all along, and they gain some electoral equity for that, but they do that without taking the risk. They let us take the risk. So the Bad Law Project, really, it's saying, okay, if that's the way the world works, and our politicians have let us all down by subcontracting it out, well, we'll pick up that contract. We will be the ones who take foundational institutions to court, and we will put them right.
And it seems to me that the added bonus of this is that it's totally non-political, in a way. So are we trying to go to that your personal politics don't come into this, and actually across the political spectrum, from the whole of the political spectrum, things like freedom of speech, the right to express yourself, all of these challenges, what Harry's been through, what we've all been through individually, are we specifically and directly aiming to be absolutely non-political?
We absolutely have to be. I mean, that's the whole point. Freedom of speech is freedom of speech to everybody. If your political views cannot survive even the most delicate of challenge, they're worthless. And that's what we seem to have been creeping into a situation now. You said the political system's broken. Of course it is. Look at Keir Starmer. 1 week to say a woman has a cervix is the wrong thing to say. There's then some focus group and they say, oh, Keir, you need to pull that one back. So he pops up saying, well, of course, most women don't have a penis, but I jolly well support the ones who do. And it's the fear in their eyes that really does it for me. And it makes me a little bit sympathetic, but mostly it makes me angry, because it should not be up to men like Harry to risk his house, to put massive strain on his family, to do what the state should be doing. Harry protected a fundamental state institution, and I think it was this high degree of cowardice that meant the people who should have been doing it weren't doing it. Where was the Equality and Human Rights Commission, for example? Where were the human rights lawyers? Silent. So without Harry, I might not have woken up in time. I mean, I'd like to think that by now I would have woken up, but it probably would have taken another couple of years, and continually being threatened and reported to the police and reported to my regulator. It's nothing to do with my politics. We need to get to a position where people can have adult conversations about where they think society should be going, but everybody has the right to be heard, and that's how the synthesis of those views come together, and we hopefully go forward in the direction that is good for the majority of people. So yeah, politics, this is not a political movement. This is about respect for the rule of law, because as Anna says, without it, democracy will crumble.
So where Harry has led, what the Bad Law Project is seeking to do is, obviously you went through some deep personal turmoil. What the Bad Law Project is seeking to do is for others who encounter a major injustice and a problem, or come into contact with bad law, we are trying to create a framework, pastoral, legal, or everything, in order for any individual from any circumstance and any leaning to be able to go through what Harry's been through, what I go through to an extent, and provide them with, from cradle to end of legal situation, so that they can get through what is essentially a very, very grueling process, because as Harry often says, the process is the punishment in these situations. So Anna, what sort of cases do you think we're going to get involved in? I mean, I know we can't talk about direct cases at the moment because of the way these things go, but we already have some cases ready to go. But what sort of things are we getting involved in, and what are we going to be asking of people? Oh, I should mention, by the way, that part of creating Bad Law is that we have to have an absolutely uncancelable platform in order to do that. We've seen with Crowd Justice what happened with Alison Bailey, and imagine being that at the level of personal pain and difficulty, and for that suddenly to be pulled from under you. So we have spent this period creating a totally uncancelable system for people to support individual cases and take them right the way through, so that every man can have a victory against the man. What sort of thing are we going to be aiming to go for?
Let me try to unpack something here for everyone. It's the public sphere. What is that? What does the public sphere mean to everybody out there? I mean, it's not just going out of your house, right, and not being at home, not being in private. The public sphere are institutions, arrangements in which we are all invested because they represent us as a collective, inclusively, if I may use that word. And earlier, and earlier I used the word corrosive to describe what I see as the gradual dismantling of the idea that the public is a commons, and it actually only serves some people. And I think this really is how a lot of people feel in this country, that if you're not totally aligned, like the windsock example, if you're not totally aligned with the winds, the direction that they're blowing, a direction, by the way, that could change tomorrow morning. So yesterday we were all at war with Eurasia, and tomorrow we're all at war with Oceania, and you have to rejig your memory and rejig your consciousness and rejig your speech so that you're on side with the correct view and the correct way of thinking and the correct way of being, and you've got exactly the right skin tone, or you happen to speak with the right accent or wear the right clothing at the right time to be permitted to have a view in the commons, you're going to have a whole population that feels totally disempowered. Because even if you're Mr. Politically Correct tomorrow morning, and I won't mention names, there are some people out there who think they're untouchable because they're always just on the right side of the argument.
Gary Lineker?
It will come back to bite them. No one is safe. You think that trans women or women is a fashionable slogan and you're safe to tweet it. Well, tweet it, because next month you might have used the wrong type of expression, because actually it's trans folks with an X. And trans women or women is actually trans. I mean, we're moving in this social media driven age, which is totally corrosive. I use the C word. I love C words. It's totally corrosive of the public sphere. And what we need is a corrective. And that's another C word. Because what we have endemic in public life is corruption. That is political lobby groups who are driving policy and confusing the public as what is policy, what is law, what is politics, what is law? Well, we say at the Bad Law Project, we know politics like porn when we see it, and we know that the law should operate as best it can, of course nothing's perfect, without fear or favour and impartially, to create a commons that is inclusive of as many people as possible, provided that those people are law-abiding, right? So this is not about let's have free speech for, people who torch synagogues, let's have freedom of expression for people who stab, ethnic minorities on a street corner. Of course not. This is not a defence of criminality, and that's the point. If you erase the meaning of law and the meaning of the collective commons, you basically make the law ineffectual. And what we see now is people have given up on the idea that criminals can be brought to account, that the police will go out and try to find those people who are breaking the law, because they're too busy worrying about what colour, rainbow helmet they're going to wear tomorrow morning. So you know what I'm saying. It's
rainbow colours.
Yeah, I kind of went off track because your question was...
Can you move your chair forward a slightly bit, because you keep knocking this really
ranty,
lovely little... No, you're not ranting. You're on fire.
Ranty,
My lip, it's flapping, and I love it.
It's my
so
lived
much.
experience. I feel passionate about it.
Sorry, carry on.
But you said what sort of cases?
Yeah.
So to conclude my rant, the kinds of cases we want are cases which expose the discrimination that is taking place in public life, where some people feel that they ought to be protected and they're not protected, to either say what they want to say or to bring causes or bring concerns to the public attention. And when people feel that they're not protected and they feel they're being discriminated against, even in the name of equality law and discrimination law, you will find real resentment and a real loss of faith in the commons, in public life. You will see retreats into private life, you will see underground movements, you'll see whispering, you'll see bitterness, you'll see division everywhere. So what we want to do is really positive, actually, is to say to public institutions, you don't have the right to discriminate, and if you do, you're not actually operating lawfully. Our laws are actually, as they are, inclusive. They promote equality. Our traditional democratic arrangements promote checks and balances, debate, and an opportunity to change things if things are not going in the way that the public feels is the right direction. And if you just abandon ship and say, oh, who cares, what's really important is that I sound really progressive today, you are, I think, on some level, betraying your heritage, which is one of the most beautifully created heritages, I think, that the world has ever known, the English common law.
Yeah, that's so well said. So essentially, what we're trying to do is, in the absence of a trust in politics, we are asking for the law to. We are active. So in opposition to what the Free Speech Union do, which is defensive, something terrible happens to someone and they defend them. We are actively going out to the law and saying, can you please clarify this for us? And if you can't clarify it, can you challenge? We will challenge it.
Yes, and the perfect example of that is, in another life, if the Free Speech Union had been around, when the police came and visited me, the Free Speech Union would have defended my right to retweet a limerick. But the Bad Law Project would have then taken the College of Policing to court for issuing the guidance that sent the police to my place in the first place. That's what it's all about. So we're about attacking the institutions that are attacking the individual. We are being the Davids that stand up against the Goliaths. That's what we're being. That's what bad law is all about. We have a situation that I heard about just this last week or two, where a young autistic boy, as 14 years of age, and I will not say which part of the country he was from, but he misgendered somebody at school.
No such thing as gender.
And
sorry.
There were some rude words. Used. So this should have been a matter for the head teacher. That was it. What actually happened was that the school informed the police, and the police came round and read Section 4 of the Riot Act, basically the Riot Act, to the child, and told them that any further instances of this kind of terrible misgendering could result in a 2-year prison sentence. The school, following the police's lead, then warned the parents and the child that unless they were able to cut through this terribly extremist behaviour, then in future life the child, as he grew into a man, would likely be sacked. If he were to say such things, say for instance in a pub, he would likely be glassed. That was said because where the police go, other institutions follow, and that's what's dangerous. The police are giving license to institutions to bully people, and particularly to bully children, and particularly to bully women, and particularly to bully those who have no choice but to do what their HR department tells them to do, otherwise they'll lose their roof, they'll lose their job, they'll lose everything. So that's where the Bad Law Project comes in.
And that's where it would come in with the police.
Yeah.
So then in terms of, I got an email last week from a school saying we're doing PHSE this term, we're going to teach children that their gender identity may not correspond with their biological sex. And I'm like, I don't want my child taught that, thank you very much. That's got nothing to do with it. So there is this sort of corrosive, as you said, ideology going everywhere. So we've got the police, we've got the education system, we've got the health service, we've got the church as well, in terms of what's happened to the institutionally racist church, not hiring a black ordinand. What else do we need to cover here, Sarah?
I think that probably covers it entirely. So basically every single foundational state institution that we rely upon to keep us safe has been infected, has been captured. I don't know how they managed to do that. It's very impressive, and perhaps when things have calmed down, we can do a study on how this particular ideology managed to be so successful. I can think of nothing like it in living memory. The nearest was the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s, but that only really engulfed a section of social workers. This is a similar thing, an ideology based on nothing, on fear. People investing their time and money and their professional reputations in pushing it. But that kind of fizzled out and burnt itself out, not until a couple of innocent people had done long prison sentences for satanically abusing children, which of course they never did. So I don't know how they accomplish what they've accomplished, but it's every single institution that I can see. The most chilling thing in my engagement with the police was not the fact that they recorded me for hatred towards transgender individuals for posting a picture of my dog with the caption, "My dog would call me a Nazi for cheese." That was perhaps more funny than chilling. The most chilling thing was then the final bit of recording I found making a subject access request that they had made about me. And it said simply this: she is entitled to her views, however wrong they are. And I wrote to the police and I said, come again? And apparently that officer is going to be sent on a day's reflection training. Not a punishment, but to reflect on the implications of a police officer sitting there putting on a database that my views are wrong. And that's fundamentally what Harry's been trying to challenge, because the police have to be politically neutral. And I do think, as we've been discussing, the rot all comes from there. If officers of the law are turning up at schools and saying to children, you're looking at going to prison for that, I think that's how it's worked, hasn't it? They must have captured the police first. They exploited the collective guilt over the murder of Stephen Laurence, and the police are right to feel guilty about that. They were institutionally racist and they failed Stephen Laurence and his family. But where we are now is a terrible, terrible indictment of the Macpherson report, and it can't have been what he wanted. And I think we've got to do what we can to make sure that the legacy of that report is honoured, that we have a police who are not racist, not homophobic, and apolitical. And hopefully everything will flow from that. I think our focus does need to be on the police, because people inevitably take their lead from the police.
Absolutely, and it's who we trust. And so I think what overall we're sort of saying is politics is everywhere now. It's in every conversation you have. It's really damaged relationships I've got with people that would never have been damaged before. It's damaged relationships I know with people with just slightly different views. So we're seeking to go, no, we don't want that as part of our everyday interaction and life. We want to remove the politics from our institutions. We don't want a political police force 100% as a lead, because I don't tell my child to go to the police if he's lost. I tell him to go into a shop nowadays. So that shows that my confidence in the police is undermined. I think we've all witnessed some of the two-tier policing that's taking place in terms of getting cups of tea for Extinction Rebellion and bashing people around the head if they don't like being locked in their houses. So, I mean, that's it really. Essentially, we exist to remove the politics from everyday life and where it's not required, and to return the free speech and everyone's right to free speech. And there'll be opportunities to donate to specific cases as they come along, and we will announce them in due course. But I hope we've told you a bit about what we are doing, and I hope you can get involved and join us, and we're here for you. There is no leader, there is no manifesto, it isn't a political party, it's for you, by you, of you.